I was going. I was just going to put myself in a padded room just for safety.
You're going to put yourself. So we've got a choice of Jon Monie in a padded room, or we've
Or
got
then
you.
I, or then I thought, but I remember from the ones I've watched, you talk about, the clearing and where, and I thought, well, I like to go. I like to take the dog for a walk. That's where I like to sort of go and
Yes.
let So I thought, well, I'll put myself on a dog walk. So that's why I walk the dog, and indeed the dog is in the background having a piss. So I thought that was actually so in the end I went with that.
I just love the fact you've prepared as the consummate professional you are,
I
and that
always think,
you've given it some thought. I love that.
well, which one do you want?
I like you in a padded cell, and I like you in your garden. Because, by the way,
Okay.
there's a lovely irony. I googled you, Mr. Lovely Jon Monie, before we started, and your website is beautiful, and I'll just riff on that in a moment. But your website says right next to johnmonie.co.uk, it says not secure, and I thought, how ironic is that?
Well, exactly. Well,
Actors,
I need to do something about that.
no, but actors were also insecure, aren't we? I know
Indeed,
that.
yes, yes,
Lovely. So, just
yes.
before I get you properly on the open road, is there anything that's off limits for you today?
No, I don't think so. Not really. I mean, if well, if it came to anything that was, I go, oh, well, fuck off.
I like that. So yes,
I
if you can trust,
don't know how much editing you do to this, or do you do no editing? I couldn't see many edit points. You just let it ramble.
I just let you ramble, John. In
Yeah.
fact, if I may just let you know now, this is all going to be awesome because I've already started recording. I haven't tried this before. I just thought I'd do that, but we can stop start if you like.
Oh, and now I've just noticed there is a recording little
So you
logo.
see what I've done there.
That's underhand. Why would you treat me like that?
Is this a moment to say fuck off?
We could have reached the end of it. It's been ever so nice.
There was somebody else I'm going to interview shortly who said it's just as well there's going to be a screen, so I can't grab you by the throat at any point, which I think is quite good, really.
Oh, you don't know how close I am.
That's good.
I could be in the next room.
So at this moment, I'm liking what we're doing already, but at this moment, I can either give us the opportunity to stop start. What would you like to do at this point?
You do whatever you wish.
Lovely. Do you know what? I like the fact this is just rambling on the open road, and this is all about just the rapport that we have, John, which is why I was particularly excited to speak to you. So I'm going to just treat myself, and I haven't done this before, but we're just going to do that as a sort of bit of a false start. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the clearing the lovely comic brilliance and brilliant mind that is the lovely Jon Monie. And if I may, John, I just need to blow a bit of smoke at you. You are one of the most profoundly funny comic minds that I know and have the privilege of working alongside. And also, if I may, you're the most underutilized brilliant comic mind in terms of the career that we're in. Because, and I hope in some way that this shows the world how awesome you truly are.
Well, that's very. And I was going to say that's very kind. I'm not too sure being called underutilized. Is that kind? I don't know. That's
Well,
just
it is kind actually, because as you
an
know,
indictment of my career.
no, and there's no disservice to your career at all because you have a very, very illustrious career, and your website, by the way, is very witty. I like to Google people just to check what they're saying about themselves because, as we know, Google is what we say we are, and it's very witty that you are an award-winning actor, writer, and presenter, and a regular improviser, which we're definitely going to talk about. But then the really lovely thing is, and an occasional table.
Yes.
I'll just let that float there. So, why do you call yourself? I have to ask. The question is, why do you call yourself an occasional table?
Well, it's I think it's a joke that possibly hasn't worked. I don't know, but there is such a thing as an occasional table, isn't there?
It's very Gilbert and George, isn't it, to be an occasional
I
table?
don't know, but I guess it was. I don't know. I'm a regular improviser and an occasional table. It pleased me when I
And John, it pleased.
I was possibly drunk.
No, and it pleased me immensely when I read it. And also, one of my most enjoyable summers that you had, and I just was vicariously enjoying your summer, was when you were in a swimming pool with a whole vista and variety of eclectic inflatables.
Yes, well, none of which were mine. I had to pilfer them when families went to the bar or for lunch.
So, just talk us through that holiday and how you started pilfering inflatables.
Well, I think some child had the most extraordinary inflatable killer whale, almost actual size, and I was determined to mount it and have photographic evidence of that. So I did, and I believe I posted it on Facebook because when you're on holiday, what do you do?
I
But
have to ask, you're not talking about mounting the child, are you? You're talking about
no,
the whale.
no. And is worthy of clarification. Yes, it was very much the inflatable plastic that I was interested in. Exactly. Has that made anything any better? So the child was nowhere near me, officer. I was simply on the inflatable, and I posted it on Facebook, and it got a good response. So I thought, and the next day I think I saw a lobster.
Oh,
Wow! I mean,
hello.
I've got to have the lobster.
Got to mount that.
And it became a game between myself and my husband, and indeed other people around the pool who cottoned on to what I was doing, who'd sort of sidle over and say, "There's a lovely inflatable St. Bernard around the other pool, around the kids' pool, around the back." And so I would go in search of more creative inflatables. And on the very last day when I was leaving, I was packed. You're going, it's an early departure from the hotel, and as I trundled past the pool, I think there was, what was it? Was it a dinosaur? I think it was a dinosaur, and I didn't have a dinosaur.
Oh, hello.
I was very tempted to undress and launch myself on the dinosaur for one last photograph, but I had to get on a plane, so I couldn't get wet.
That's very Jurassic Park here. I have to undress and mount this dinosaur.
Eh?
See what I did there? So you were just after this complete menagerie of the complete collection of inflatables by the end of this holiday.
Yeah, I didn't want, you can get, they're like slices of pizza inflatables. I wasn't touching foodstuffs.
No.
I was mainly interested in the animal kingdom.
Lovely. And there is somewhere which we must at some point share on the interweb. There is a montage of all the inflatables gathered in one JPEG, isn't there? There is a picture.
Yes, I took photographs. I very nearly got stuck inside a child's ring. That's right.
Oh, you see.
But no, but because I tried, it was a tiny little horse thing, and I thought, I'm having that. And when the family left it unattended, I grabbed it and jumped in the pool, but I had to get in it, and then I couldn't get out of it.
This has escalated fast. Now we're grabbing a child's ring, and there we are, Jurassic Park, and it's all good. Very good. Wonderful. And thank you. We've now stuck with, you've got a padded cell behind you, which I hope is okay.
That's fine. Yes, I feel safe.
So, lovely. Jon Monie, welcome to The Clearing. We are in Instant Wit together, and I have had over many, many years. Do you happen to remember, this isn't a test question, but how many years you've been in Instant Wit for?
Is it 10? I don't know. As you say, I don't know the correct answer. It feels like a decade.
It feels like a wonderful decade. And before that, by the way, I knew of you many, many years before that, because, during this time as well, and before the sad demise of the lovely Chris Harris, I knew of you because of being the comic foil of the brilliant Chris Harris, and indeed your mantle, you've exceeded that crown, because you have had a whole career in pantomime, which was born out of your relationship to him, haven't you?
Yes, I mean, the very first one I did at Bath, he wasn't part of. He was, I think, still the Bristol or Vic at that point. But the second one I did, he was the start of his tenure at Bath. So we had an instant good relationship immediately. I mean, from the word go. And for some reason, he sort of took me under his wing. I realised with hindsight, he was. But mind you, he was very nurturing towards anyone, anybody that.
No. I mean, you're doing yourself. He really, really gravitated towards you because you were going to become the most brilliant comic foil of probably his, last 10 years doing pantomime, I think.
But we used to. It was a strange thing. We used to talk comedy a lot and swap. He was forever bringing books in. I mean, I didn't really know him very well at this point. Our very first pantomime, he would forever drop a book around it. My dressing room, have a read of that, read that chapter, or a VHS, watch this sketch, and we would discuss and agree or disagree on things. And I remember on the penultimate day of the run, he turned up with a book, and I remember thinking, oh God, I'm never going to read this by tomorrow. He's going to want to know my opinion on, and it wasn't to read. He said, this is a book, and I can't remember what the book was. He said, but anybody I've ever worked with who I've really, really loved it, I've asked them to sign this book. And I remember looking through the book, and there were some extraordinary names in this book, and I felt very honoured and flattered to be asked to, scribble something on a page somewhere. But it was only then that I realised how much he seemed to see in me, if that makes sense. Because I love that.
So there was almost like, so you, if I understand that beautiful story correctly, he so admired you that you sort of qualified to sign his book.
Yes, he said, I don't ask everybody to write in this book, but
yes,
he saw something, bless him.
And indeed, to this day, your wonderful relationship with the Bath Theatre Roll continues. I know this year is a very interesting case in point because of COVID, that your pantomime's not happening this year. But, you know, I was really delighted to see in how we've all navigated this particular period in time that you've now written something called Pantomonium, which was for them, but you've now taken it on the open road somewhere else, haven't you?
Well, I wrote it for Bath, really. I wrote it effectively and selfishly to save my job this Christmas. I tried to write myself into employment and save a few of the team as well. It's basically a cast of 4 playing 6 parts, and it's sort of
Yes.
a condensed, brand new story pantomime. Bath loved it. The producers loved it. They couldn't sadly agree on how to fund it in these difficult times. I mean, film on shows is risky, full stop. But at the moment, it's almost insane.
Mm.
But thankfully, Blackpool have decided to go for it. As things stand, I mean, it's on sale. It's selling ridiculously well. I mean, it's
fantastic. And ironically, Blackpool are in a slightly darker place with their COVID than we are.
Indeed. I mean, so we wait to see whether, I hope to goodness the curtain will rise on opening night, primarily because I don't get paid unless it does. So,
Okie dokie.
So I'm very much hopeful.
Yes. So we are in instant wit together, which bizarrely I've realised isn't very easy to say, but I love being on stage with you, and we've done it many, many times. And in fact, we've done some Muppet Gallery of Zoom sketches during this time together as well, which have been thoroughly enjoyable. And so I love you as a comic foil in any case. You lovely man. If I had a book, I'd definitely ask you to sign it, is what I'm telling you.
Oh, bless you. I wouldn't, but thank you.
Lovely. So I'm going to take you through to the clearing, if I may, please. So,
Okay.
As you know, there are some storytelling metaphors and archetypes that might be a bit boring already, but we're bringing you into a place called the clearing. So for you, Mr. Jon Monie, where do you go to get sort of inspirational and to think, would you say?
Well, I did think about this because I knew you were going to ask me it. I don't like sitting at a blank screen or page for hours on end. I find that quite well, nobody does. So I tend to go for a walk. I'm not a big fan of exercise. I hear it's good for you. I've yet to believe it. So I walk the dog. I live out in the country. I'm going to change my background now that we're in the clearing. I'm going to where I actually walk the dog, because that will make me feel. There we go. That feels better for me. And there
Beautiful.
is the dog.
And just tell the listeners the name of your lovely dog.
That's Hamish down there. Yes.
Yes, it is. And
so I tend to like to go out or do something, or wash the car or mow the lawn. I've always found that if I get stuck in the creative process, if I do something, I'm going to go there. If I do something manual,
I get that. And I love the comic conduit going full circle to the day that you thought there's an inflatable ring that I have to stick myself through, which is exercise, John, to just compliment you.
It was that day. Hours. 3 nurses couldn't restore order.
Also, I had the great joy. I had probably one of the happiest places in the world for me, which is like my clearing, is that wonderful place in France called lessuranglais.com, where we had 4 days a couple of years ago together doing the Instant Wit Laughter Lab. And that was when I got to know you much better in the ways that we've been, on stage together a lot. But that was just a really lovely opportunity to go into a much happier type of lockdown, but because we decided to go to the same place with a group of instant witters to do the Laughter Lab. So that was a lovely time too. So yes, you're on your walk. And for those of us that are listening, Hamish's breed of dog, please.
He's a West Highland White Terrier. And he rules the house.
Of course. Lovely. So there we are in your clearing. And anything else you want to tell us about your clearing?
Nope.
And we're going to shake your tree now. And bless you, you've really thought this through. There is a big tree behind you. So we're going to shake your tree to see which apples fall out. And the apples take the form of this delicious storytelling exercise where you've had 5 minutes, or as long as you needed, to think about 4 things that have shaped you, Mr. Jon Monie. 3 things that inspire you. 2 things that never fail to grab your attention. Oh, an inflatable ring, such things. And then 1 quirky or unusual fact about you, of which I'm sure there are quite a few, that we couldn't possibly know until you tell us. So it's your tree to shake. Just go on the open road. Where do you want to go over here?
I struggled slightly with the numerical value of things. I can't think of 4 things. Although, I mean, immediately, my immediate response to things that have shaped me, my immediate response would be to say cheese, alcohol, lack of exercise and naturally round shoulders, I would immediately go for the joke. I mean, I remember I watched one of these discussions, and you asked the question, how do you introduce yourself to people when people
Yes.
say, what do you do?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, what do I? And my knee-jerk reaction is to always go, well, as little as possible. When somebody says, well,
Yes.
that's my sort of kind of go-to.
So what do you do as little as possible? Love that.
Yeah, I tend to go for the joke first, and I guess is something therefore that has shaped me in terms of that mindset. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's not of itself irreverent to do that. What I love is the comedian's instinct to just try and find the humour in things.
Yeah, but I'm not even sure that sometimes whether it's particularly funny. Sometimes it's very much a. I mean, for example, I always knew I was going to put a background up behind this Zoom chat. I wasn't going to show my house, not because I'm in any way ashamed of my house, but because this is a way of me maintaining. Is it control? Is it the way I am presented and seen? And I don't think it would matter whether I lived in a cardboard box or a mansion. I would still have put up a silly background behind me, because that is my.
No, and the silliness is what's so appealing, because we must keep being silly, because humour is what, in adversity is what sets us free. Actually, the ability to be self-effacing as well, and just have a bit of a laughter lens on stuff.
Yes, yeah, and obviously I think being sort of taking the mickey out of oneself is healthy. It can go too far,
yeah,
as all things can. But I guess that's an instinct which has shaped me. Is that an answer?
That's a great answer. I love that. So anything else that shaped you, or you can go where you want within that construct, and I don't care. You can go on the open road wherever you want, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm fascinated by the whole nature and nurture thing. I don't know how much of ourselves is something we create by ourselves, or whether it's already programmed in us by parents. I mean, you can't ever. I don't see how anyone can talk about things that have influenced them or not influenced them and not mention parents, because it's just not. I don't see how that's possible. Whether that influence be good or bad. So, but I'm always intrigued to see how much of me is them and how much of me is me, and I've never got to the answer.
And do you mind me asking? This is a bit of a lateral question, but are your parents now back safely? Because they've gone on a slightly dark comic road trip, which you may or may not want to tell us about.
Well, no, it's my parents, bless them. My dad is 75, my mother is 77. My mum has diabetes, and sadly, in recent years, has been diagnosed with dementia. But they've for the last 10, 15 years, they bought when they retired, they bought a motorhome, and twice a year, for about 2 months at a time, they swan off drive all the way down to either the south of Italy or the south of Spain, and spend about 3 weeks meandering down, stay for a couple of weeks, and then slowly wander their way back. But obviously, I thought that wasn't the best course of action to take during a global pandemic. But no, my father seemed to think that was perfectly sensible. But I'm delighted to say they are returned, and they've finished their isolation and seem somehow to have survived intact.
An extraordinary road trip in utter adversity because of their own condition and then the condition of the world. But there was. I did howl with laughter when you told me about it for the right reasons, because it was just such a dark comic story.
Yeah, I mean, I was slightly not angry at my dad. I was anxious, but I know why he did it. He did it because my mum, bless her, my mum with her dementia, she is happier, it seems, when she's away. She's happier when the sun is shining and there are things to distract her, and the motorhome is very familiar to her. So I don't think she's disorientated by that, but perhaps the ever-changing background as they move around. I don't know. She seems to be better when she's away, and Dad was wanting to make her life, more bearable for her and happier. But it put me and my sister through a bit of stress.
Wonderful, but they've succeeded and they're back home despite all the challenges to that. Successful.
Just rabies. That's all they got.
Lovely. So not COVID, but rabies. We got bitten. Right. Lovely. So back in the clearing, we're still there, but anything else you want to tell us that's inspired you, shaped you, never fails to grab your attention? Obviously, inflatable rings we've talked about.
Oh, I see. Inspired me. I was thinking about what inspires me. I don't know what inspired me. And then I thought, I tell you what I like. I like small acts of kindness. They are, and more so now than ever. You can see these big grandiose things on on the news or on social media, but I'm not a big fan of social media, but I love it on Twitter when something wonderful happens, be it somebody's lost wedding ring has been returned to them, or some small act of just giving somebody a bit of time, a bit of attention, a bit of a help. Those things I think make the day bearable.
Yeah. And there's a question I'd love to ask you about what inspires you. I love Stan Laurel as my all-time comic hero at the sort of genesis point of my awareness of, clowning and the thing that how laughter can really help. Who are your comic heroes or hero?
I've always loved Morecambe and Wise. I will, and the two Ronnies, primarily because I guess they were on TV when I was. They were what made my mum and dad laugh, and I think that's always important to you when you're. Oh, they're laughing at that. What's making my parents laugh? And indeed, if ever I'm on stage and I make my dad laugh, that's the one laugh I'm listening out for.
Oh, how lovely!
More than any other, for whatever reason.
Isn't that beautiful? How ironically the sort of the nature of being a man in our case is the idea that you spend most of your life trying to get a bit of affirmation from your parents or from your dad.
Yeah, and no, indeed, yes, absolutely. I remember I hosted some, I think it was a charity gig, and we had these Spanish guitarists came on to do it. They were classically, I don't know what they were, but they came on, and for it must have been 7 or 8 minutes. The two of them sat there, and they went. Ding 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 ding, and it was interminable. It just didn't stop, and they finished to a smattering of applause. And I came on after them, and I said, "Well, now they've warmed up. They'll be back later to do some songs." And I remember hearing my dad. Just the one laugh of that audience, but I remember hearing my dad laugh, and that made the whole nightmare worthwhile.
That is a lovely story right there. Lovely. And indeed, you've done what I'm always struck with in your comic choices that we enjoy together when we're comic foils to each other. I know there's a real legacy of experience in comedy. So you referenced Morecambe and Wise there. There's wordsmithery of the two Ronnies. And then you subsequently, part of your journey to now is you've been in a double act yourself called Avent and Monie. Is that something you want to talk about as well?
Yeah, well, no, I did a double. I mean, Graham, Avent, to pronounce his name correctly. I'm quite happy to give him no mention whatsoever, but you've done it. No, we were school friends, and we did a double act, and then we went our separate ways. I pursued, entertainment, and he went into what my mother would call a proper job. And we have got back together occasionally to do things, and it's fun, and never say never. It was interesting. We wrote a show which we took to Edinburgh a couple of years ago, and we did a few tryout gigs down here in the southwest. And Graham got quite nervous because he is no longer used to this and performing. And he said to me, do you get nervous? And I said, well, yeah, of course I do. But I said, well, what I do is I tell myself, this is what I do, and that's my little mantra. If I'm in the wings or in my dressing room and I get a bit, oh no, here we go, I remind myself, this is what I do. So all is fine. And I'm hoping that was helpful for him. Although
that's a great tip actually of itself to overcome adrenaline. To just remind yourself that whatever you do in life, this is your version of show business. This is me stepping in. This is what I do. Yeah,
this is this is fine. This is what I do. And it's quite an accepting thing, and I don't know whether it helped Graham or not, because I suddenly thought, well, this isn't really what you do. You're the head of marketing for a vet company now, but it's what I tell myself.
And by the way, that is, therein lies the actual answer to the real truth of what you do. Then, not as little as possible. What you do is you step onto a stage and you entertain people.
Yes, if I was to take your question seriously, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I don't think there's any. I don't. And there's been this whole thing lately of with the arts and this government's somewhat awful suggestion that we just all retrain.
Yes.
Train, get a different job. And I know this, and this applies to not just performers, but poets, painters, sculptors, dancers, singers. I think if you're in the creative industry, it's more than a job. Yes, it pays the bills, hopefully, fingers crossed. But I don't think you become an actor for fame and fortune, or if you do, you're an idiot. You do it because it's what you do. It's like when you pick up paintbrushes for the first time, or you play a piano and you think, this is what I, this is me. And to say, oh, just go and retrain is it kind of misses the fundamental point of being a creative, I think.
And the need for entertainment in society, as we know, I mean, we're pushing on an open door here. I think there is a real misnomer about the nature of the arts at the moment, which is a tragic legacy of this time.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's difficult at the moment. I mean, we will, theatre and entertainment will survive without a shadow of a doubt, but not everybody will, and not every
Yes.
venue can, not every producer or performer or writer can. So yeah, what we end up with, I don't know.
And then back to your lovely clearing. You can go. Anything else you want to tell us about the apples that we're shaking out? What about a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know that's not inflatable related?
Do you know, I'd forgotten to think about this one. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you three facts about me, and you guess which one is the lie. Okay,
Lovely.
we'll play that game.
Yes,
So
please.
I'm going to say, um, Gary Barlow stole my cigarettes.
Bastard.
I'm going to, I'm going to say um, that I have um, thrown a hand grenade, and I'm going to say that I have sung backing vocals for the Wurzels. Those are my three things. It might surprise you.
And how are we going to get over this? Because it's just you and I. Do you want answers on a postcard, or do you want me to have a
Yeah,
guess? Or
no, we'll run it as an open-ended competition. No, they're all true. There we are. There are three things that are all true about me that I just tried to think of something that.
okay, and so one wasn't a lie then.
None were a lie. I
Oh,
couldn't think of a lie.
oh, okay. So the game, there's not really a game then. You're just going to tell me three facts.
Yeah, I
we've
got, I
just
got
we've just stuck on a really crap idea for a game show that's not going to go anywhere. But love that. I was all set to do another
I
recording
couldn't think.
where we get the answer
Bizarrely,
from it.
as an improviser, I failed to think of a lie.
Yes, and I love that. Beautiful. So now we can walk away from your tree at this point, if you like, and then we're going to talk about in the clearing,
Mm.
alchemy and gold now. So when you're in flow, as the entertainer that you are, when you're truly at purpose, what is it that you know that you love to bring? What's it all about for you?
I don't know. How do you answer that? I really don't know. I think there's a moment. I think when you're in a sweet spot, when you've absolutely nailed it. I don't know whether that works. I mean, I've done a few plays and things. Comedy comedy is a different beast. You know, when you've landed that joke, and which you may have written as well. Which is a double a pleasure. But when you've just absolutely smashed it, and that's quite unbeatable. But I don't know how you guarantee that, or necessarily how you achieve it. It just sometimes happens. Um,
I love it because it's about stretching the metaphor. It's about prospecting for gold, and you can't have gold all the time. But every time you hit that seam, it's why you do what you do.
yes, and interestingly, you mentioned Chris Harris. I remember, and so I knew he was going to come up today, and various things have come flooding back memory wise. But I remember, I think we were doing Dick Whittington, and one of the best things about my relationship with Chris is that we never discussed it. We just didn't. And we were doing the scene on stage. I think it's a sweet shop scene, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was that happened. But something I think went wrong. Probably him, but something went wrong, and then I ad libbed, and he had. There was a little moment. There was a riff. There was a little something which we'd never done before. And it was more than just a line. It was a little. It developed into a little something, and it got a really lovely response and a big laugh, and it was just a delightful moment. And then the clock came in, and the lights go dark, and we sort of scuttled off into the wings, and we looked at each other, and we both just smiled, and then just went to our separate dressing rooms, and we never discussed it. And but sure enough, the next night we did it again, and I don't think it ever grew or developed or became a competition that I'm going to add this in this time. It was just something that we found, and we never analyzed why we found it or how we found it, but it was a little gem, and we just left it, and it stayed there. um, but we never, but there was no sort of afterwards where I went round to his room and said, okay, well, that was good when you said that. And so next time you say that and I'll say this, and then I'll pretend to forget. And then we never did any of that. And that's quite unusual, I think, to meet somebody that you work with as effectively a double act.
Just a moment of true connection, and really what everything is about in entertainment, I think.
And interestingly, I think in all relationships, that there is status, and whilst Chris never ever in any way sort of impressed his status on me, I would always take the lowest status. I always felt that he was the teacher, I was the pupil, that I would try not to stand on his laughs, although I have a separate story about that. But and I think now that I've started working with Nick Wilton, bless him, is our Dane in recent years, I think because he now probably thinks the opposite. He'd think, oh, I'm on John's patch.
Yes.
I'm the newcomer, and because there always has to be that slight difference in status, and so that's changed slightly. But I always saw Chris as the boss,
and I'm
which
really
he was, and actually he did tell you every now and again.
It sounds so natural and appropriate to me that you will be enjoying your moment on that pedestal of being the one that's got the higher status within your comic domain, because you've really come up through a sort of a strand of respect with shadowing and being mentored by Chris Harris, and then this is your moment in the sunshine. Yeah,
I guess so. I mean, I just tried to continue what he saw. So hopefully.
And indeed, there's lovely elements of why it's so wonderful in the time of our lives that we're on to be on stage together, because there's just this. I just love the oxygenation amongst all of the players within Instant Wit. There's just this really lovely mutual respect for how we can make each other look good and occasionally find. And I've been on stage with you. What's so lovely about comedy improvisation? It's so disposable. I know that we've struck comedy gold together, and me, you, and Steph had, and Nick Howden, and all the beautiful people that come along to play in that space of the comedy improvisational arena. We've had joyful moments of striking comic gold.
Yeah, just like I was describing, equally as potent and inexplicable and magical. But I think a lot of that comes with having absolute faith and trust in the ability and the personality of the people you are with. I mean, certainly how I felt about Chris Harris and how I feel about the Instant Wit members. You couldn't do that if you felt you didn't trust them.
Yes. The nature of trust is such a wonderful thing. If you can get to that point where you just know and can be just on the same wavelength and not need to talk about it, just be it, which is that is alchemy right there. I think that's a beautiful answer to that particular set of questions. I think you said you had a separate story there about.
Well, no, I did, but I'm gonna save it for the end, because it's my. If I were to say it now, it's going to be my piece of advice. My
okay.
That you do, and I haven't got another one. And seeing as I screwed up the other bit, I'm going to save it.
Now, just before I award you with the cake, which is when
we're
coming to it. But is there anything else you'd like to say? Any other memories that have occurred that you think, oh gosh, I've remembered I ought to maybe say that? I mean, there's no pressure here.
I would like to point out, I've got a really uncomfortable chair that I'm sitting in, and I'm having to move. But I realise that because I've got a superimposed background, you can't see the chair. It just looks like I've got piles. It looks like I'm very uncomfortable, but I haven't.
And listen, piles are fine for the radio, dear, because this is going to be, we're straddling two horses, if I may, neither of which are inflatable, but we're going to be doing, this is a Zoom video for those that
prefer. You didn't tell me, that's doubled my fee.
And then there's going to be the podcast version. So the podcast people can just imagine your lovely background and your hemorrhoids, whereas those who are watching can see your hemorrhoids and your lovely background as well.
Okay. Well, for the benefit of those listening on the radio, I haven't got piles. That's basically the message I'm trying to get home.
I think that's clear, but we're now questioning, because I think he does protest too much. He has got hemorrhoids, ladies and gentlemen, probably, but we'll never find out. It's a mystery. Lovely. So, is there anything else then, apart from your chair and your hemorrhoids, that you want to talk about?
No, only until we get to the cherry on the cake bit.
Right, let's give you the cherry on the cake, Mr. Jon Monie. I'd now like to award you with a cake for having blessed us with your presence in the clearing. And it has been a tremendous pleasure doing this. But the cake is where, as you've quite rightly alluded to, you're going to put a cherry on the cake. And that takes the form of, the best advice you've ever been given, something you'd like to leave us with, notes to a younger self, whatever you like to say, dear, the cake and the floor is yours.
That's a big old subject, though, isn't it?
Yes, all right. Can you just?
Well, I know. I'm just saying. I mean, you're very
It
generous with
is.
it. Yeah.
I thought
No,
about
no.
that.
I did think about this, and it actually does tie in quite nicely because we've spoken a lot about Chris Harris and why not. Um, was something he said to me. I think it was the first panto I'd ever done with him. So this is going back over 20 years, I would imagine. When I started doing panto, I wasn't the comic lead. Chris was always the Dane, but I started off in the secondary comic roles. So like PC Pong or Dandini, before you sort of graduate to your wishy-washies and your
And in
buttons.
terms of status, is that that's the sort of Buttons generic?
Well, no, Buttons is your comic lead, and then but then Dandini is a secondary comic character in Cinderella. For example, in Aladdin, you've got Wishy Washy; he's the comic lead. But there's also PC Pong. So you don't get as many scenes or as many gags, but there are sort of sometimes secondary comic characters, and that's where I sort of started. And I think I was, excuse me, PC Pong. And I've never been. I don't know. I look back at my career or my.
I just love that moment when, excuse me, PC Pong.
I'm going to get
like it's.
I have been accused in the. No, have I been accused? That's a lie. I've never been accused. I don't know whether sometimes. I think I tried too hard to begin with. I remember the very first pantomime I did. I was Dandini, and for whatever reason, I got a very good reaction from it. But when I look back, it's because I was just upstaging. I mean, I was quite undisciplined. Now I look back on it. I think at the time I was thinking to myself, I've only got 3 scenes. I need to stand out. I need, no such thing as a small actor, only a small part. I need to make this part as big as possible. I can't waste a single second that I'm on stage. And so I think I threw the book at it, which some people loved and some people probably didn't. And I probably annoyed other people in the cast who with hindsight, very graciously let me get away with it. And I remember, I think the following year as PC Pong, Chris was doing something on one side of the stage, probably setting up a very elaborate bit of wordplay. And I was on the other side of the stage, and I decided to do a bit of comedy business with my truncheon. I don't know, for example, but it was never malicious. It was never like I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna pull focus now. That's what I'm gonna do. I was just always so aware that I'm on stage. I'm working. I need to be
busy. Yeah.
Funny with my feet, something with my eyes, something with what can my hands do? How can I utilize this moment to its absolute capacity? And obviously I did something which did distract from the joke of Chris Harris. And we walked into the wings, excuse me, and he gently prodded me in the chest and he said, "Not your turn." And that was it. Just not your turn. And then I got it. And it wasn't my turn. He was setting up a joke over there, which needed the audience's attention and focus. And by me doing whatever it was I chose to do in that spontaneous moment to try and get a little titter from someone, split the focus and undermined his joke. And I think that's quite an interesting overall philosophy for life. Sometimes it's just not your turn. And we can get very frustrated about why is it not happening for me? It's happening for them. Why are they so where they are in their career and I'm not? Why do they have that nice new car and I don't? Why have they get 2 holidays a year? Sometimes it's just not your turn. And it may well be that we never get a turn, tragically. Yes. But I don't know. But your turn will come, and I think you should still fight for your turn, and you deserve your turn. But sometimes it's just not your turn. And I find that quite comforting in a way. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just loving the silence that should follow that great landing of a great sage bit of short, sharp, punchy, really strong life advice.
Yeah, he just put it in the chest. He said, "Not your turn." Not to say you can't get laughs. I'm stopping you from having laughs. You'll have plenty of turns. But at that moment, not your turn.
It's making me think of a resonant quote, which was a T.S. Eliot one. This is slightly highfalutin, not to hijack that point, because it's definitely your turn, what we're doing here. But it's words after speech reach into the silence. So
Okay.
sometimes you can land something really, as he did in The Wings, not your turn. Just, bish, bash, bosh, 3 words, but actually you're going to remember it for the rest of your life.
Yes. Yes. And it was said with, it was said very much as the teacher to the pupil. It
Yes.
wasn't said as a telling off. It wasn't said as it wasn't, dressing down in any way, shape, or form. And he
Yes.
was absolutely right. And subsequently, I have now been on stage as the lead comic, doing a routine, and I'm aware that the guy playing the smaller part, I'm like, what are you doing? What I do? Why am I? Chopped liver? I'm acting here. What are you doing over there? Not your turn. So, and I think it just comes with a bit of experience and with a bit of discipline, and also with the ability to feel comfortable and safe enough to go, okay, I can wait.
Yes.
My laugh's coming. It's just not this one. That's his. Let them have theirs. And there's a great quote which I don't know who said it, but something I stumbled across on social media the other day, which is blowing out somebody else's candle doesn't make yours shine any brighter. So why trample over their moment, be it deliberate or not? Just allow other people to have it's their time, so they can have it. Yours will come.
Great philosophy, because of course, in the nature of the acting profession, there is comparison constantly there to sort of steal your thunder potentially. And I learned very early on, whatever you do, comparison is the thief of happiness. Don't let it eat your soul. And you've got to trust your own process.
Yes, it's a very similar thing, but it's not an easy thing to do, I don't think. And I think that very much depends on the person that you are, and how you think, and how your brain taints
Yes.
and perceptions. Yes, if you can live like that, then great. But it's very difficult not to compare.
And I love the fact the generosity of somebody else's words that you're passing on as your legacy is something that you've really adhered to. Anything else you'd like to say that's something that you've learnt?
No, I know. I'll leave it with Chris's wise words.
Beautiful. So, Jon, thank you so much for taking the wonderful time to park up in my Keyring, and a pleasure to join you in yours as we welcomed you to the Good Listening To podcast with me, Chris Grimes. You have been listening to Jon Monie. And Jon, where can the listeners, if there are any, who knows, but there'll be millions, but where can we go and find out about you on the interweb?
Oh, well, you can, well, depending on how busy I am, either a street corner or my website. Well, you'll find me on one or the other. www.jonmonie.co.uk. Listen, I'll do anything. You know that. I'm talking to you right now. So just reach out and touch.
And the Jon Monie is a JONMONIE, isn't it?
Yes, there's no H. It's not an affectation. I'm not being trendy. My father is John with an H, and I am John without an H. My sister is Joanne. My mother is Jane. We are a singularly unimaginative family.
You've dropped your H because you're common. That's what it is. On that note, thank you so much, Jon. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Pleasure.
Goodbye.